everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make a couple of cards using the November stamp of the month called Thanks a Bunch. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make 2 cards, and this is the stamp set. You can get it for $5 with any $50 purchase, or you'll get it for free if you're a VIP. Okay, so I'm going to start with several pieces of cardstock, and the first one is White Daisy. I've loaded a whole bunch of these sentiments into my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp them out with Versamark ink. This is a sticky ink that you use with embossing powders. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ink everything up and stamp them out. You could certainly use a large block and put more than one stamp on it and get the same effect, but it's super easy with your MISTI. Okay, so we'll get that inked up, and then I'm going to sprinkle some embossing powder on it. So this is Shimmering Pearl. It's from Nuvo. You could pick whatever color embossing powder you like. You can use clear, you can use pearl, you can use sparkly, whatever you want. I just want a subtle effect with the all of the sentiments on White Daisy. You could use white embossing powder too. Okay, so I'm heating everything up with my heat tool and melting the embossing powder. And then I've loaded a single stamp into my MISTI, and I'm going to ink it up with pine ink. And I have a small strip of White Daisy in there. I'm going to create a little banner. So I'm going to ink this up in pine. And then I'm going to clean off my stamp, and I'm going to ink it up again. First, I'm going to make sure it's completely dried up and hit it with some of my anti-static powder. And then I'm going to ink it up again with Versamark ink. And we'll go ahead and stamp that out over the exact same spot. And I'm going to sprinkle some embossing powder on this. This is Tim Holtz Rustic Wilderness, and it's green, but it's clear. So it'll just enhance that pine and give it some shine. Okay, so we'll heat that up, and then I'm going to create a banner. So I'm just going to shorten it and then trim in the center and take each of those corners to meet that snip to take that triangle out, and then you have your banner. Super easy. Okay, so now some of this pattern paper, this is from Silver Bells. You can pick whatever you like. I want it to keep a nice subtle look to this card and just have a little pop of pine. So I'm going to cut 1.5 inches by 5.5 to put a small border of this gray pattern paper next to my sentiments. And then I'm going to bring in some pine shimmer trim, and I'll cut that at 5.5 inches. And then we're ready to start building our card. Quick and easy. I love all the different fonts on this stamp set. There's so much versatility with things you can do with it. Okay, so we'll just lay down that White Daisy piece. Border goes over to the right, and we'll just start assembling here. And this time I'm using my mono tape runner. And we'll go ahead and add that border. And then I decided that I wanted that shimmer trim to be a little bit skinnier. So here's a trick to cutting it in half. Add some tape runner to the back before removing that backing to your shimmer trim, and it'll keep it in place so that you can cut it in half. So I'm using 1/4 inch instead of 1/2 inch, and then I'll save the other piece for another card. Okay, so we'll trim that down, and then we'll add that banner with some foam tape. And then got to add another little pop of sparkle. So I was going to use some of these little pearls and change my mind. They weren't dark enough. Or they didn't work for me. So I ultimately decided on these iridescent ones, and I believe they're from Buttons Galore and More. And just scattered a few of those around. They go nicely with that pearl shimmer powder, embossing powder. And there's my finished card. Okay, let's make another one. This time I'm going to use Royal, and I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 4. Okay, and I still have my stamps in my MISTI. Just making sure, I'm going to cut a diagonal on this, so I'm just making sure I've got the right size to work with. And I'm going to hit it with some anti-static powder. And this time I'm going to use iridescent purple from Hero Arts. And it's a very fine embossing powder, so make sure you use your anti-static powder with it. Okay, so I'm keeping the stamps in my MISTI from the last time, and I'm going to ink them up with some Versamark. And we'll go ahead and stamp that out on Royal. Okay, so we'll add that embossing powder. I love the effect this powder has on Royal. It's an iridescent purple. Looks white, but watch the magic happen here. So I'm going to melt it with my heat tool. And again, it's a nice subtle effect, and when it catches the light, it's very cool. Okay, so I want this whole panel to be covered. So I'm going to place it back in my MISTI, and then I'll shift those stamps over and realign them so that I can continue and fill up that whole panel with sentiments. So I'm going to do the same exact thing, ink them up with Versamark, and then I'll sprinkle some embossing powder and then heat it up and melt it. So that whole panel is covered. Okay. All right, make sure you buff it out after you're done. This is a very fine embossing powder, and it looks like you got it everywhere, but once you buff it out, all that excess, it gets removed, so it's all good. All right, so I'm going to cut a piece of white daisy at 4 by 5 1/4, and then I'm going to bring in the new color of the year. This is Journey, and this will be my base. I'm going to cut that at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I think the two colors pop nicely together. And then I'm going to put this embossed piece back in my trimmer at an angle, and then I'm just going to trim it. Okay, so I'm just going to use that bottom portion, and I can save the other portion for something else. And I'm going to bring in some shimmer trim. This is Journey. And I'm just kind of eyeballing my measurement there, and I'll stick it in my trimmer, trim it down, and again, I'm going to cut this in half so it's 1/4 inch. Same trick, just add a little tape runner to the back of your shimmer trim so it doesn't move. Line it up and slice it in half. Okay. Just going to lay everything out. That's the basic design there. I'm going to go ahead and start assembling, but I'm not going to put the white daisy on the Journey just yet because I'm going to do some stamping on it. Okay. So I'm going to hit it with some anti-static first, and I'm going to bring my mini MISTI in and place it in there, and then I'm going to grab a sentiment from the set. And this time I'm going to use Grateful for You. I love the font on this. It's so pretty. So I'm just going to lay everything out right on that white daisy section and pick it up with the Door of the Misty and ink it up with royal ink. So I'm going to do the same technique. I'm going to stamp in a ink color first, and then I'll emboss over it. Okay, so making sure this is nice and deep and dark and crisp. And then I'll clean it up and ink everything up again with Versamark. So I'll stamp in the same exact spot with the clear Versamark. And then I'm going to sprinkle some of that same embossing powder on top. This purple iridescent powder, and we'll go ahead and heat that up. And it just hits the light in a really cool way. You still get that nice royal color that's underneath. Okay, now we can start assembling. So with this one, since I'm going to have that piece of shimmer trim at an angle, I don't want to completely assemble yet. So first I'll put the journey down on my card base. And then I'm going to add the shimmer trim right at an angle there. And then I'll trim off the excess from the sides. And then I can add the panel to my card front. Okay, so we'll just put everything down with tape runner. And then to finish it off, I'm going to add some of these sequins. And these are from, this calls for confetti. They're sequins without the hole in the center, and they just hit the light in a certain way. Sometimes they're purple, and sometimes they're that teal color like the journey. Pretty cool. So I scattered a whole bunch around. Went a little crazy there, but they're really pretty. And there's my finished card. So I'll make a list of all the supplies that I use with links in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. And then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And thanks for watching.